Hey everybody, I will get started now here. Can everybody see my screen?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Again, my name is Travis Perlman. I'm a project coordinator with Austin Housing Finance Corporation. I'm the staff lead on the program side for this request for proposal solicitation. Joined on the line is Alan Fish, also with the Austin Housing Finance Corporation. He's the procurement specialist helping out with the solicitation. Alan, would you mind introducing yourself and saying hi?
Yep.
So
Hello, my name's Alan Fish.
survey results.
And again, I would ask, please, any people that are participating in the phone call, just ask that you please mute your phone or your computer, unless there's a comment or question to make. You can also leave comments and questions in the chat box as well. That'll help with making sure that there's no feedback on the line. So today, I'm going to burn through a brief presentation as quickly as I can, probably about 15 to 20 minutes I'll spend on the presentation. A lot of it's a very high level rehashing of the contents of the RFP itself. And then I want to leave the remaining 40 minutes or so of this meeting today for y'all to ask any questions or get any clarifications that y'all need. But just to walk through very quickly what we're going to be speaking about today, I'll introduce you to our organization. Some of you are familiar with us and some of you may not be. I'll talk about, the flow of communications while this solicitation is open. I'll go over the overview of the specific property, the subject property for this request for proposal, the development objectives of this RFP, the criteria on which AHFC will evaluate each proposal, the timeline, and then also the requirements for submission and execution of a contract. And then again, like I said, I'll try to leave it open at the end, 30 to 40 minutes or so for y'all for Q&A. So for those of you who are not familiar with our organization, we work for the Austin Housing Finance Corporation. This is a quasi-public organization created by the Austin City Council in 1979 to develop affordable low-income housing. There are housing finance corporations all over Texas, all over the country. We're governed under local government codes, basically state statute, that allows us to create housing finance corporations and gives them certain powers. When we are in the office, typically we're located at 1000 East 11th Street, Suite 200. But most of us are out of the office and will be probably for the next month or more. All right. So in terms of communications, while this request for proposal is open, we ask that all communications to city or AHFC staff while the solicitation is open, basically before a proposer is awarded, we ask that those communications be directed to either Alan Fish or myself, preferably in the form of an email, such that it's documented. It's important that we're very transparent in this process. Having stuff written down, both what the questions were and what our response was, is really important, and ensuring it's a fair and equitable solicitation process. We will send out notifications, RFP revisions and clarifications, both to the original distribution list that we sent out and also any other participants who's registered for this meeting that weren't on that original distribution. And then lastly, I'll leave a disclaimer. Make sure that when y'all are responding, that you're responding directly to the RFP. That's what you'll be judged on. And so the degree to anything that myself or Alan says, anything that we say tonight conflicts with that RFP, the RFP does supersede. So let's dive into the specific property here that y'all are interested in. This property is just is about 6 acres, even 6 acres. It's located on Gardner Road, and adjacent to US Highway 183, Airport Boulevard, East 7th, and Cesar Chavez Streets. So it has great transportation access, both north-south and east-west. And it's about 2 miles from the central business district, a straight shot there down East 7th or Cesar Chavez Streets. In terms of neighborhood amenities, it's less than a half-mile walking distance to Eastside Memorial High School. As you can also see from the image below, it's an area that has a large amount of parkland, dedicated parkland, and such. And it's also, this property was a property that was purchased by the state in the late 50s. The city of Austin acquired it, I believe, in 2002. And the city sold this 6 acres of this larger 44-acre property to AHFC in 2014. The site itself has approximately 1.17 acres of 500-year floodplain on the north. Property, an existing overhead electrical transmission line runs along the border of the western property boundary. That easement is not on our property, it is on the adjacent property. The property is currently zoned public, so will need to be rezoned for residential development. And it also hasn't been subdivided, and so it will need to be subdivided before it's developed as well. In terms of our development objectives, we put out very high-level development objectives. We wanted to leave it flexible so that proposers could present their vision for their site for the highest and best use of the site, and that those proposals could be evaluated on the merits in terms of how they advance the ball for specific housing policy priorities that the city council has adopted over the years. In terms of the specific development objectives, from a high level, it's maximizing the number of income restricted affordable units with a particular emphasis on deeply affordable units, so less than or equal to 50% of the median family income. And then any project that we award would be expected to be affordable for the long term. So for rental, that's going to be a minimum of 40 years from the date a certificate of occupancy is issued, and for ownership, it would be for a minimum of 99 years. And those properties, any affordable properties proposed under the ownership would likely, not necessarily, but the Austin Housing Finance Corporation has been building and putting properties into our community land trust for the last 5 years or more. That's something that we're looking to expand. And so it is likely that with any ownership proposal, that one of the things that we would look favorably upon is using a community land trust type model. Some of the other development objectives, the other 2 main ones, is maximizing the number of multi-bedroom units for families and dedicated continuum of care units for persons experiencing homelessness. And then lastly, minimizing the city of Austin's subsidy that would be needed. And also, if any proposals that offer compelling financial benefits to AHFC, that's also will be looked favorably upon in the proposal. Okay, I stopped that. Sorry, technical difficulties. Okay. So evaluation criteria. These are the criteria under which all the proposals will be evaluated. They will be evaluated by a panel of subject matter experts, potentially from development services, economic development, perhaps from the Office of Real Estate Services. And then obviously we'll probably have one or more staff members from the Austin Housing Finance Corporation as well. And they'll be given the direction to evaluate the proposals on how well each proposal addresses the development objectives in the RFP and how thoroughly each proposal demonstrates their ability to successfully complete the development described in their proposal through their response to the criteria listed below. So you could take a look there at those criteria. The maximum total points that could be achieved would be 90. I do want to give a little bit deeper dive into this. And if you look at the RFPs themselves, if you've already looked, you may already know this. The proposals will be scored in 2 phases, essentially. All proposals that get submitted meet the minimum requirements and are submitted by the due date will be evaluated by the RFP panel and scored for evaluation criteria 1 through 5. The evaluation panel may then select the top 3 highest scoring proposals and advance them to presentations. And in that case, we would invite the top 3 highest proposers to present to the RFP panel. We'll also submit those proposals, particularly the operating pro forma, development budget, and sources of funding information to a third-party economic consultant to perform a financial feasibility analysis on. That analysis will be provided to the RFP panel prior to the presentations, and the RFP panel will take that information into consideration when scoring evaluation item 6. And then after the presentations, the RFP panel will then score the final evaluation criteria number 7. Give you a high level of the timeline. You'll know that this RFP was released June 15th. Today we're here June 22nd. Proposals due July 25th, so that's a 40 calendar day, more or less, response window. And again, in that initial panel scoring of evaluation criteria 1 through 5, that's going to be August 5th. And again, the top 3, up to the top 3 high scoring proposers will be offered an invitation to present to the RFP evaluation panel. And that'll take place on August 26th. And the RFP evaluation panel, again, will score criteria 6 and 7. They'll make a recommendation to the Austin Housing Finance Corporation Board of Directors on September 17th to award a contract, basically to authorize AHFC to negotiate and execute an agreement to develop the property with the highest scoring proposer. Ultimately, the AHFC Board of Directors has the ultimate discretion in determining who gets awarded proposal. And then based upon, once the AHFC Board awards the proposal, we'll then begin exclusive negotiations with the selected proposer with the intent of executing an agreement to develop the property before the end of the calendar year. So in terms of your submission requirements, we have a pretty low bar to entry here with this RFP. We didn't want to weigh everybody down with a bunch of paperwork at this point. Certainly, once a winning proposer is selected, there will be additional paperwork and requirements that will be required of that winning proposer. But again, we didn't want to create a high bar of entry from the outset. So at minimum, all proposers must be legally formed corporations to be considered for award. And then these following documents, which are included in the RFP PDF document on our website, which would be the affidavit of submission, the declaration of non-collusion, non-conflict of interest, and anti-lobbying, and the non-suspension of employment declaration will need to be completed and turned in with your proposal. Additionally, we ask that all prime firms provide a certified financial audit completed within the last 2 years with their proposal to be considered for award. So that's in terms of contracting. So once we've selected a proposer, these are kind of some of the minimum things, expectations that will be required for any winning proposer as a condition of contract execution. Firstly, you'll need to be registered vendor with the City of Austin. That's very easy to do. That's kind of the portal by which we make payments to parties that we contract with. We'll ask that the selected proposer add AHFC's insured party on their business insurance and potentially purchase additional coverage meeting AHFC's minimum standards. Any development that gets selected will be expected to participate in the city's smart housing fee waiver program and also generally comply with the city's housing preference policy. And that the memo describing that policy is linked in the RFPs. Additionally, we'll ask the proposers to potentially furnish AHFC with a performance bond guaranteeing completion of the project. And if a partnership or bonds of some sort are proposed to finance the development, we would require that AHFC be the issuer of those bonds or the general partner in that partnership. That is it for me. Like I said, very brief. Really, these meetings are mostly for y'all to float out any questions that y'all may have. And so at this point, I wanted to open it up for questions.
Write it, but it's not in our. I just think it would be powerful. Is that me? No. Is that Rachel?
You can also make it easier to post questions.
It's just scrolling through everybody. That was my name.
Any questions? Wow, I didn't think the RFP was that comprehensive. One question I did get from
Microphone's off.
potential proposer that I will share. Just FYI, I thought it was an excellent question, and a lot of you probably want to know. There was a question about what the appropriate income and rent limits to use would be. And we will send out, we do intend to take some questions that have been posed previously via email and any additional questions that may be received tonight, compile those, and then send those out in a clarification. And again, that notification will be sent out to everybody on this call. But in terms of the rent limits and income limits, our department uses the home income and rent limits, except in cases where a property is being financed with tax credits, at which time we will allow the developer to use the tax credit income rent limits. All right.
Travis, if you want to ask if they want to put their questions in the chat, perhaps.
Yeah, exactly. Okay,
Hey,
so question from Liz here regarding the objectives to maximize units for homelessness. Is there a minimum number or percentage of units HFC would like to see. No, there is no minimum. Again, we left it very flexible. I think the reason for that is, most developers have certain business models and niches. And so we wanted to cast a wide enough net as possible, because while we are getting more developers, affordable housing developers in Austin, we still don't have that many. We wanted to make sure to allow everyone. So we do not have a minimum. Now, everything will be considered on balance. Will the PowerPoint presentation be available for distribution? That's a great question. We haven't really considered that. I think we can make the PowerPoint available for distribution, and I can send that out again to the original distribution list plus the attendees of this meeting.
Hey, Travis, this is Alan.
Yes, sir.
We generally don't give out the PowerPoint. I mean, you can if you want to, but we really want people to read the RFP and for them to go directly by the RFP and not by the PowerPoint. If there's something in the PowerPoint that's not correct, then there's some confusion between the RFP and the PowerPoint. I don't want that. And the second thing is you put absolute dates in there for our timeline, which would be great. But as you know, things happen along the way, like pandemics. And so those are just that's our wishful thinking list. And hopefully we'll meet that target and it'll all be great. But, I wouldn't hold us to that firmly. That's more of a guideline. So.
Fair. Okay, is there any preference for mixed use on site? Or is there a preference for 100% residential? No, there's no preference for mixed use on this development. Of course, you're not precluded from that. Obviously, we're a housing finance corporation. Our business is affordable housing. That's the primary. We would expect that would be the primary use of the site. I would say certainly no more than 25 or 20% at most, and that's actually a really high number. I wouldn't expect to see anything near that number. Definitely no more than 20 or 25% should be non-residential of gross floor area. Okay, going through some different questions. Is there a preference between home ownership versus rental? That's a great question. There is no implicit preference. I think where that becomes, where that kind of happens by just naturally is if, let's say, one of the challenges with ownership sometimes is it's because there's limited funding sources. It can be much more difficult in terms of a subsidy per affordable unit, much more expensive. And so minimizing the city's subsidy per unit, for instance, if someone put in 50 ownership units where they needed $5 million versus 200 units rental project where they needed $1 million, that's going to be that it will be certainly the one where we get more units for less money will be scored higher. So that may happen naturally. It just depends on how I think you structure the deal at the end of the day. And what are the additional funding sources, what the MFI levels, it doesn't have to be that way, but it could be. Will the list of participants on this call be made available? I'm going to defer to Alan as the procurement specialist on that to see if that would be appropriate.
Yeah, so that is appropriate to do. And in a normal world, we would have a list of people sign in and we would send that out just as a normal course. I'm not sure how WebEx works, but I think we've got email addresses on all these people,
Yes.
which we're going to have to compile some sort of list in order to send out. We're going to have at least one clarification as part of this process, so we can include it as that. My thought is that we'll do a news release just like we did for this initial launch here, and then also follow that news release up with email blast basically to all the people that we sent it to originally, plus all the people on this list. So I think that's doable.
Thank you, Alan.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, it looks like it is being actively recorded, this meeting. So pretty easy to send out the meeting invite. Yes, the meeting is being recorded. Again, Alan, I'm gonna defer to you in terms of what I don't think there's any issues with us sending out the video. Again, I would defer to your experience on that.
So I don't have a problem because this is a public document, right? It's a public meeting. If there's some way we could put this out on our website as a news release kind of thing, or I don't know, I have to defer to Jeff on that as to how to do it. But I think that would be easier than trying to send it out like in an email kind of blast.
Yeah.
So we need to think about that.
Yeah, that sounds good. Okay, is there a preference for 9% housing tax credit versus 4% bond deal? No, there's not. Again, it's really the development objectives. So just to kind of play out some of the trade-offs here, right? So we could have a 9% project on the site, potentially have less units, and potentially the city may or may not need to subsidize the project at all, other than providing the land. Or you could have a 4% deal, which has many more units, and maybe we'll have to subsidize it a little bit. But again, it has many more units, and so again, these things will be evaluated on balance based upon the development objectives, the high-level development objectives of maximizing the units, depth of affordability, mixed income, multi-bedroom, minimizing city subsidy, continuum of care units, those things. I understand there's a requirement for parking, but is there a specified number of parking spaces per unit or per bedroom? No, no, there is, there's obviously regulatory requirements imposed by the Land Development Code, and you'll have to comply with that, just as with any project. We don't have a minimum per se, but what we if you started to probably get below one space per unit, I think we would want to see some sort of information related to the market demand, or I guess lack of demand for parking in that area, or the lack of need for parking in that area, or the oversupply of that parking in that area. So no, we don't have a minimum, but it could be beneficial to provide context once you get to a certain low parking ratio of why you feel like that's an appropriate parking ratio. Okay, it looks like I've answered all of the questions in the chat this far. If anybody has any additional questions, happy to take those. And it seems like the chat, posting those in the chat is the best way to communicate at this point. So thank y'all for doing that.
Hey, Travis, this is Alan again.
Yes, sir.
So we have another meeting tonight on the other property. There may be some questions that cross both projects. And so when we compile our list of questions and put them together, we're probably going to put together 2, one for each property, but we will be redundant on the questions that apply to both, just to make that point clear. And that way people that don't attend the second meeting, but their general questions, right, that would pertain to this, we'll make sure they get that question too. So.
Thank you, Alan.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Again, thank you everybody for joining us. I'm happy to hang on here for a couple more minutes if anybody has any additional questions. And again, if you feel more comfortable just emailing your questions to Alan or I, that is our preferred form of communication after this pre-submittal meeting. Got a couple thank yous. Appreciate the thank yous. Thank you for coming out on a Monday evening and joining us. And thank you for your interest, obviously, in the project as well. All right. Going once. Going twice. I don't have any questions. Okay, everybody. As Alan said, I'm sure you're probably aware, we're putting out another property for doing RFP right now on Tillery Street. That meeting is tonight at 8. If you've registered, you should have received that link in your email this morning as well. I think that's going to be it for us. Again, thank you everybody for joining us, and I look forward to seeing all of your proposals. Look forward to seeing the project progress. And again, feel free to reach out to Alan and I with any other questions that may come up. Thank you, everybody.